In this video, we will show you how to install your front suspension leveling kit on this Ford F-150. This is part of your front steering and suspension, located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. To do this, we're going to have to safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so both front wheels are off the ground. Of course, whenever you replace this part, you replace both sides of the vehicle at the same time. We're going to have to remove the wheels. To remove the wheels, just find the spot on your center cover that you can make your way in and behind, gently pry it out of place. Behind that, you're going to find 6 21mm lug nuts. Remove all 6 of those and the wheel. With the wheel out of the way, we're going to focus in the center area here. You're going to find that you have a small metal cover. Go ahead and use some pliers to pull that out of place. You do want to make sure that is reusable, replace it as necessary. This one looks like it could use replacing. Behind that area, you're going to find a 13mm mounting nut. We can remove that. Now we're going to use a hammer and punch. The punch goes directly in the center of your axle shaft. A couple light taps, we just want to get some movement from this area. It's time to disconnect the outer tie rod end from the steering knuckle. You're going to find a 21mm mounting nut. Let's remove that. Just a quick inspection of that hardware. Of course, you will want to replace it as necessary. I'm going to start it back on a couple threads, and now we're going to dislodge that tie rod end from the steering knuckle. Now there is a couple different ways you can do this. If you have a tie rod removal tool, you can use that. Otherwise, a hammer with a couple light bonks along this area should cause vibration and break it free. A thorough inspection of the outer tie rod end to confirm nothing's damaged or weak in any way. This boot looks good, tie rod looks good as well. Once you have the outer tie rod end disconnected, we're looking along the back side of the steering knuckle, just above where your front axle is. You're going to find vacuum tubing for your four-wheel drive. For this, we're just going to gently pry it out of place. We'll give it a quick inspection, make sure it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged. If that is the case, you won't have vacuum leading to your four-wheel drive. This looks fine. Let's set it aside. Now up along the top of the knuckle, we're going to dislodge our upper ball joint nut, leave it on there a couple threads, and then we'll tap on this to break it free, so we can eventually pull it out and rearward. This is another area you could use a ball joint or tie rod end separator. Now a quick note about once we do remove this and start pulling it away, you want to make sure you do not put a tug on the axle. That's the reason why we remove the axle nut. Now we're going to pay attention along the bottom of the front shock where it connects to your lower control arm. In this area, you're going to find an 1 1/16 headed mounting bolt leading from the front towards the rear. Along the back side here, you're going to find a 30mm mounting nut. Start getting this out of here. Now we should have plenty of movement down in this area. After confirming that, we're going to make our way all the way up to the top of the front shock. Now we're inside the engine compartment. We're going for our first mounting nut up along the top area here. Let's get our 15mm on here. We're going for the top of the shock tower. This is just below the master cylinder. Now we can make our way into the front wheel well. In the wheel well, along the top of the shock tower, we can see our next two 15mm mounting nuts. Just going to start that one back on, a couple threads here. Now we can remove our final mounting nut. Now we can get that back off of there. We're holding onto our front shock and we can start removing this. For that, we're going to start down along the bottom. Just go ahead and start pulling it out of place. You can use a pry bar if necessary. Now that we have the shock out of the vehicle, the next thing we'll do is just pay attention along the top. Make sure everything's clean. It's time for our spacer. For this, you're going to find that it has 3 circular ports. We want to make sure that those align with the studs. You're going to find that this is a triangle, but it's not a perfect triangle. So if it doesn't seem like it fits for some reason, just go ahead and keep spinning it until it does align. Once you have that in place, continue on with a washer in each one of these and a mounting nut. When installing your mounting nuts, you want to make sure that you have the neoprene locker facing up and away. You'll be using a 17mm to snug each one of these mounting nuts. The torque for these is going to be 35 foot-pounds. To be able to torque this, it's a good idea to have a rod, or you can use an awl through the bottom port of the shock. Now we can hold this while we continue on torquing. Now that we have those torqued, let's just pay attention along the top area here. You can see that we have 3 threaded ports. Just like before, they form a triangle, but it's not a perfect triangle. The original triangle had an arrow facing essentially towards me, or inboard we'd say. Now if you were looking at this one, it's the opposite. We want to make sure we have the shock installed properly. Let's bring this into position. Now as we bring this into position, we have that triangular arrow facing inboard, as I mentioned. Now this is fairly heavy and it's going to be difficult to align. Take one of your brand new mounting bolts with a lock washer and one of your flat washers. We're going to slide that right down through its mounting port. Now we can align that with the threaded portion along the top of the shock cap. Now I have that one started in, but I'm leaving it loose. We'll continue on to the next. I'm just feeling along in here. I'm twisting as necessary. Let's get this one started in as well. Now up along the top, we're going to start snugging only one piece of our mounting hardware using an 8mm Allen head. We do want to make sure that we can still move the front shock around, but it's nice to have it pulled up as high as possible for the next portion of this job. Now for down along the bottom, we have our mounting bolt, it's cleaned, and I've applied some red thread locker. This will be coming through from the front towards the rear. Obviously, we need to get this aligned. You're going to find that it's a little tight in this area. We're going to pull down on the front suspension so we can swing the lower shock into position. I'm using a pry bar. Going right along this area of the frame, and above my sway bar, I can continue on applying pressure. With that pressure in place, let's get that shock inside. You may need assistance to get this in place. Now for the lower mounting bolt, I always like to use some red thread locker directly on the threads. We'll take that, we're going to align the lower portion of the shock with the lower control arm port. Slide that bolt through from the front towards the rear. Let's get this lined up here. Make your adjustments as necessary. Rubber mallet. Start on that mounting nut. Now the next thing we want to do is make sure we start in the rest of the hardware. This is going to be the inboard bolt. That's accessed through inside of the engine compartment. Now typically before I do that, I'm going to put some support underneath my lower control arm, and we're going to raise that lower suspension. That's applying pressure in this area so we can tighten the hardware after we have it all started in. Now we've got our third mounting bolt here. Blue thread locker, both of our washers. Start it in, snug it up. Once we have this snug, we're going to torque it to 35 foot-pounds and repeat the process for all others. And we're using an 8mm Allen head socket for this. Now we can make our way back in the wheel well for the next two mounting bolts. Inside the fender well, snug them, torque them to 35. We're down at the lower shock. For this mounting bolt, you're going to be torquing it to 351 foot-pounds. Most torque wrenches don't go that high. I'm going to use an air gun and drive it in. Now we can start bringing the knuckle into position where we can align it with the upper ball joint stud. We're going to flex the upper control arm as much as necessary, and we'll bring it into position. Start on your upper ball joint nut. We'll bottom it out. The torque for this will be 85 foot-pounds. Now you can remove support from underneath the suspension. After that, we're making our way along the back side of the steering knuckle. We have to reconnect our vacuum tubing to the four-wheel drive hub actuators. Line it up, press it on. Once you have it on there, we're just going to give it a light tug, confirming it feels like it's properly secured. You can use a wire tie if necessary. Moving along, it's time for the outer tie rod end next. We're going to get this aligned with the steering knuckle. Start on your 21mm nut, torque it to 76 foot-pounds. Now it's time for the axle nut. For that nut, we're going to snug it up. The torque for this is 20 foot-pounds. To help prevent this from turning while I torque, I'm using a pry bar directly across these studs. Now we can install our metal protective cap. Looking along this area, you can see there's a ridge. I'm using an 1 1/8" socket. You can tell that that sits right on the ridge as it should. Now we can get this in position. Just line it up, socket in place, tap it on. Double check to make sure it's seated all the way around. Let's prepare to reinstall our driver's side front wheel. We'll get it in place and start on all 6 of our 21mm lug nuts. For the lug nuts, we're going to start each of them on. Once they're all started on, we can bottom them out. We'll get the wheel safely back down on the ground. Now with the driver's side front wheel down on the ground, we can continue on torquing each one of our 21mm lug nuts to 150 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Now if you have a center cover, let's install that now. For the center cover, there's one area that you want to pay attention to. You're going to find that you have this small prying area. If you were looking at the rim itself, you'll find that you have a notch to align that with. The notch is going to be located closest to your valve stem. We'll align this and tap it into place. Double check, make sure it's secure. Okay friend, we finished the installation on one side of the vehicle. Whenever you do this, you always do both sides of the vehicle and the process will be the same. After you've completed that, go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.